native ES modules. This is what I'm going to talk about. But first, make it work. There we go. So I go way back to the 80s. I tried the whole startup CTO thing, didn't work out. I'm probably going to die a developer. Coding till the last minute. Testing the code is a passion I've had since like forever, like 20 years. I test everything I write. How many people write tests for their code? Okay, how many people write tests for their CSS? See? If you want to learn about it, come talk to me about Applitools. Applitools is all about visual testing. We have a booth. Come over. It'll be interesting. But I'm not here to talk about visual testing. I'm here to make things work. Okay, I'll stick here. But before that, surprise. That's me, the little baby. That's my dad. And in the background, do you know what that is? That's Singapore. I was born here. Yeah, 50 years ago. Ooh, my age. So it's an amazing experience for me. I got here yesterday and just walked around and oh my God, this is home. Just the last one, my mother and me, and I don't know. You probably recognize the pool. It's probably very changed. So yeah, I'm home. Thank you for having me. Native ES modules. Just a reminder for those of us who haven't used ES modules, it's the export-import thing where if you're exporting, you have a module, a file, and you export a function or export a value or whatever, and then in another module, you import it using that syntax. That is what I talk about when I'm saying ES modules, okay? So everybody's on board. Most front-end developers know what that is because Webpack and all those bundlers, back-end people, less. Okay. What are native ES modules? The way I define it is ES code that just works without any problem, and I'll explain that because back in 2015 I gave a talk. It was called "Navigating the Wild Seas of ES Modules," and I had to explain stuff like the syntax, which doesn't need to be explained today, default export, transpilation. The whole idea of Babel wasn't really used back then, not to mention bundling, the idea of taking all that JavaScript code and bundling it into one file. This whole idea was very new. I had to explain it, and everything we take for granted today needed to be explained. And today, we all know the syntax, well, almost all of you. Transpilation is a given. Everybody uses Babel in the front end, and bundling is like, yeah, well, right. And we forgot something. We forgot that between 2015 and 2019, we had to go through the valley of JavaScript fatigue. Who remembers JavaScript fatigue? There we go. What's this whole, the configurations in Webpack? People got confused so much about all that, and for the right reasons. It was difficult and still is difficult. But today, it's like, Webpack, Babel, configuration hell, nobody sees the problem anymore. But it's there. It's not easy. And native modules is trying to go back to the simpler times. Yeah, trying to go back to the simpler times when we can just refresh the web page and that's it, it worked. No configuration, no Webpack, no transpilation, no nothing. We want ES modules to just work. And we want them to work both in the browser and in Node.js. And this talk is exactly about that. How the path is going to be. It's not there yet. And you will see it. It's not there. 2019, we're not there with ES modules, native ES modules. But I believe somewhere in 2020 and definitely in 2021, we will all be using ES modules natively. So remember me. I'll come back in 2 years, hopefully, and you will tell me, remember, you were wrong. That's a plug-in for my CFP in 2 years. Okay, using ES modules today, we code with ES modules. We have lots of files. They're all importing and exporting thing, and we're basically creating a dependency graph of files and modules importing and exporting one another. And we take that we use Webpack or Rollup or any bundler of choice. We create one big file, which we just script source. That's what it is today, no native. But believe it or not, today, all modern browsers, meaning not IE, okay? No, seriously. Who hates IE? Yeah. I have to support it in my visual grid. Anyway, all native ES modules, all browsers, all modern browsers use native ES modules. You can just use them without transpiling. And how do you do that? First of all, you script source just like any other, but you don't script source a bundle. You script source the root of the application, app.js or whatever, but you add type equals module. First of all, what's that? What's that type equals module thing? And the answer is it's a new concept. It's actually not new. It's from 2015, from ES6. ES6 defined two kinds of codes, or two kinds of interpretations of JavaScript code. One is script, that's the one we're used to, and the other is module, that's the new one, and I'll explain. Script is not allowed to use import or export. That's the first thing, easy. And there are little minor differences. For example, this in the global scope is window or global or whatever global thing we have. And it's non-strict by default. If you want it to be strict, you add use strict. Module code is allowed to use import and export. Obviously, it's module code. And this is undefined. No idea why, but this is true, and it's always strict. By definition, it's strict always. So remember that script source app.js. This is real. This is from a front-end testing workshop I'm giving. I'm using native ES modules because it's the simplest. And I'm doing import controller from /control.js. And this just works, okay? No bundling, no nothing. Browsers understand that without Webpack. So let's talk about that. First of all, each import, we can see 3 imports here. That's each of them is a separate HTTP GET. They're basically getting the controller.js file. And there are no bare specifiers. You have to start everything either in absolute URL, HTTP : / whatever, or a relative URL / whatever, or / folder / whatever .js. And you have to specify the extension because that's how web servers work. You need to specify the extension. Okay, that's the 3 things. Each import is an HTTP GET. No bare specifiers like import lodash or import whatever. And you must specify the extension. And the execution model is cool. It's not like today. It's asynchronous. So all the loading and the parsing of the modules is asynchronous. It's happening in parallel. So this is really, really fast. And the execution, once the loading and parsing is done, you first load and parse everything asynchronously, and then you start executing the modules, the JavaScript in the modules, bottom up. Today it's synchronous. Tomorrow, once we have top-level await, hopefully, it will be also asynchronous. But the million-dollar question, it's the question on everyone's mind. Okay, yeah, extensions and everything. Can we take our NPM-based code, our Webpack code, which uses imports, and just use it in the browser? And the answer is nope. Not yet. Not yet. Remember 2021 when I'm back here? Hi, Jane. Why? First of all, when we import a relative, like import something from /foo, do we add a .js today? No. The Webpack, or if we're using Node, adds the .js automatically. But in today's world, in the browser world, we need to add that. No bare specifiers. I mean, without bare specifiers, without importing packages like lodash and whatever, we can't really work. And the last thing is, I have hundreds of ES modules in my app. HTTP getting each and every one of them, that's a killer. We will talk about each one of these and how we will deal with them. And part of how we will deal with them is looking to the Node.js part. Let's see how that works in Node.js. Native ES modules in Node.js, and then we'll combine everything and you'll see the whole picture. Now, Node.js already has a really good module solution, native if you want. It's called CommonJS, and it looks like this for all you front-end developers that don't trust back-end developers. I remember that. Don't go walking in alleys at night in dark. I see her. I've been both, by the way. So, okay. So require. It's require. It uses require syntax. It's not a syntax, it's actually a function, which imports net and DNS and node fetch and whatever. Very, very similar. The syntax is similar to ES modules, but it isn't. Okay, it's specific to Node.js, and it's called CommonJS or CJS in short. And ESM is ES modules in short. So ESM in Node.js has to take the existing system and slowly migrate to a totally new system, which is similar but not exactly the same, which is really, really tough. And it's a how do you call it? Tug of war. Sorry, it's a tug of war between two things, between two goals. First of all, forward thinking. I want ESM in Node.js. We want ESM in Node.js to be compatible with TC39, with JavaScript's specification. It has to be compatible to the letter. It can't just do its own thing. And the other thing, it needs to be compatible with browser ES modules. Why? Because the modules working group in Node wants the whole thing to work together, wants code that is universal, that works both in the browser and in Node.js and works seamlessly together. So that is one of the goals of Node.js modules working group, not ignore what is happening in the browser. Unfortunately, we need to go the other way. We want to work well with CommonJS, okay? And we want to be somewhat compatible with the Webpack way of ESM. As we've seen, Webpack and browser ESM are not the same. We can't move from one to another, but we want to be somewhat compatible with them so that the migration process works. Okay, so we have forward-thinking goals and backward compatibility goals, and a lot of times there's a conflict between them, and we have to choose. And it's a discussion. It's very, very controversial, but usually what is chosen is the forward-thinking goals. This will hamper migration probably, but in the end, it will, I think, it will benefit everybody. So let's see what they came up with in Node 12. First of all, not like require. Require does the same thing as Webpack. You don't have to specify the extension. So this won't work. Import something from somewhere won't work. This is better. You must specify the extension, .js. But it's not .js. It's MJS. Or, as I like to call it, the Michael Jackson script. Yeah. So yeah, it's actually module JavaScript or whatever. JSM was already taken. So MJS is the new thing. First of all, why extensions? Why extensions? Obviously, browser compatibility. Remember, the goal is browser compatibility. If browsers say that we need an extension, then we're going that way in Node.js. But why .mjs and not .js? Because an ESM file is not a script. It's a module. And it has different way of thinking about the code in there. And if an editor tool, for example, wants to let's say ESLint wants to ESLint the file, it needs to know that this is module code and not script code. So they decided on a specific extension. There are other reasons, but in essence, that is the point. This was like, oh, they're idiots back there in the modules working group. This caused a huge uproar, and we understand that. Developers love their JavaScript extension, and I understand. There's you know, it's just an extension, but there's an emotion feeling to .js. I really understand that. And so they came up in Node 12 with a solution, which is type equals module. So if you have a package JSON with type module in it, a field, a property, then all the ESM, all that package, the JS files will be ESM. But then they will be only ESM and not CommonJS. So you can switch between the two. You can say, I want this to be a regular package, CommonJS, JS file is CommonJS, or I want it to be ESM and all JS are ESM. So you have this. .mjs is always ESM, is always ESM code. .cjs is always CJS. And .js is by default CommonJS. But if we have type module, then it's ESM. Weird, but it's, you know, like every compromise, nobody is really happy, which is good. In CommonJS, we can, and in Webpack, we can do something like import something and specify a directory. Okay? This doesn't work anymore. This doesn't work anymore. If we have index.js or index.mjs, that doesn't work anymore. It works only if some dir has a package JSON. Again, browser compatibility. And this is bare specifiers. Import something from load dash or from whatever package it is. Obviously, this works. I mean, if that didn't work, no Node.js program would work anywhere. But you can't use the index.js thing in Node modules. So a package has to have a package JSON with a main entry point, and you can't rely on index.js. But you're saying, why do we need this whole thing? Because bare specifiers are anyway not backward compatible. It doesn't really matter whatever we choose in Node.js because there are no bare specifiers in the browser. Which brings us to, yes, they're not specified there yet. They're currently illegal. If you try to put a bare specifier in a browser code, then it will blow up and give an error. And it works in Node.js. But this was an opportunity, finally, for the Node people to start influencing the browser people. Okay, for Node saying, look, we understand bare specifiers. We know how that ecosystem works. Let's work with you people and define something that will make bare specifiers work in the browser and be Node.js compatible. And what they came up with was import maps. Import maps are needed only by the browser. Node.js doesn't need them yet, but they're needed only by the browser. Node.js, if it gets a bare specifier, it knows to look in the node modules folder, right, in the node modules directory. But browsers don't. So what you do is, let's look at the right side. We have a script type equals module, and it's importing load dash, for example. That's a bare specifier. For this to work, we need another script type equals import map, which specifies all the imports. So for example, you have import moment and import load dash, and the import load dash says if we're importing a bare specifier, then that bare specifier, that will be the file for that bare specifier. So the browser looks into that conversion map and knows where which HTTP get to do to bring load dash in. It actually makes total sense and very easy. There's a lot of details around it. You can go and look import maps on the web. It's really interesting and really cool. It's starting to become implemented in Chrome. Hopefully other browsers will catch up and we will have as a standard. And it is a path to universal ES modules, modules that work without any change, both in Node and the browser and Webpack. And how will it work in Node? The idea is, or for browsers, the idea is once you npm install or yarn add your module, that npm install or yarn add will modify an import map in the root of your package. It will modify the import map so that browsers, if you script source to that import map, will know exactly where things are. So you will npm install your packages and then just import them using native syntax, and then no Webpack is needed. You will just refresh, change the file, refresh the page, or do hot module loading, and boom, everything works. No Webpack, no bundlers whatsoever. By the way, the npm install thing that updates the import map, that's a speculation of mine, so caution here. So as we've seen, we get universal native ES modules, meaning modules that work both in the browser and in npm land, Node.js, etc., without any change. And this is the most important thing. Import maps will allow Node.js and browser compatibility with no transpilation or bundling. So let's review. What about the problem of extensions for module files? Node forces you to write extensions. So everybody is basically saying, when you're importing something or when you're requiring something, start adding extensions to that thing, because the world is migrating to having the extension in the import. It may be a bit ugly, but that is the reality. What about bare specifiers? Bare specifiers, which was a problem, now we will have import maps in a year or two, and we've solved that problem. What about HTTP getting every one of my 100 modules? Is that solved? Nope. And the answer here, I call it the black hole problem, because I'm certain a lot of you have seen this, the heaviest object in the universe, and some of you haven't. That's nice. Yeah, node modules is huge. Lots of modules. First of all, it's not that big, because we want not the dev dependency, we want the production dependencies. Most of the hugeness in node modules is having TypeScript, Babel, Webpack, ESLint, and all those development tools inside node modules. It's like in Java, every project has the Java compiler and the Eclipse and whatever development tools are inside. This is the situation in JavaScript today. So it's not that big, but it's still too big for production. It's still like tens of modules, hundreds of modules. Too big for production. If I need to HTTP get all of them, that's a problem. And now I don't have a lot of time, so I'm not going to expand on this. The solution people thought was going to happen was HTTP2, which allows us to bring a lot of files at the same time, and for the server to push all these files to the browser even before the browser requests them. That's better, but it's not good enough. There's an article on that. I don't wanna talk about that. It's like I do want to talk about that, but I'm out of time. And the other thing, I think the real answer is what is called the web packages solution. The web packages is an upcoming standard which enables us to bundle files as they are as HTTP resources and give them to the browser in one time. Fascinating subject. Again, I don't have time. So, wrap up. I'm getting these signals here. Browsers support only relative paths. And it's lunch. I know. Node, support for relative paths is intentionally browser compatible. So it uses extension, it uses MJS. But if you really love your JS, use type module in the package.json. Bare specifiers are there in Node. Support for bare specifiers in browser will be coming, hopefully using the import map proposal. And the black hole problem is a problem now, but it probably will be solved by technologies such as HTTP2 and web packages. So the future is very bright for ES modules, Node and browser interoperability without the need for bundlers and transpilers. Simpler times, people, are coming. Thank you very much.